The weather outside says winter's on its way, but on this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we're going to take a look at two sports that take place in the springtime. Our menu today calls for women's softball and men's baseball. Our show was called Mastodon Spotlight, and it's coming up next. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maas. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Well, as I said a moment ago, the weather outside is cold, and we may see some snow, and winter's on its way. There's no doubt about that. But on this week's show, we want to take a look at spring sports, two in particular, women's softball and men's baseball. And in our first segment today, we're happy to welcome back to the program head coach Keith Fisher and his trusty assistant Dennis Smith. Gentlemen, welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Let's take a brief look back, year number one of the Keith Fisher regime here at IPFW, a year that saw the girls play hard. The record may not look as nice, 13-19 overall, 3-13 in GLVC play, but all in all, for year number one, it wasn't all that bad.
Not too bad, not too bad. Actually, I think our program had more wins than any softball program here at the university, and it wasn't because of me, it was because of the young ladies that were on the team. And we were happy with the season, but we weren't satisfied with the season, and this is what we're striving for this coming spring, to wind up with a winning season.
Briefly, if you can, Keith, talk about a couple of the highlights and a couple of the lowlights of last year.
Again, highlights maybe the number of wins that we had. Probably, you know, I really don't look at the negative side of anything. So we just knew we had to improve. We knew we had to recruit some good freshmen coming in for this coming season, and that's the way we looked at it. We knew we needed some pitching. And maybe later on you can talk with Coach Smith about the pitchers that we have, and without pitching in this sport, you really struggle. So we're fortunate, I think, this year, and we're really looking forward to the pitchers that we have this year.
For those of our viewers that may or may not remember from when you were on the program last year was your first year as a collegiate head coach. You've had many years of high school experience. Now that you've had a year, and actually I think a year prior to that was a volunteer assistant, since you've had 2 years to look at the collegiate side of things, what is the biggest difference that you've seen between high school and collegiate softball?
Well, I think it's maybe the level of play. Girls in the high school program, especially I'm looking at the pitching aspect of it, you know, maybe they face 1, 2, maybe 3 top hitters against one team, where in college they're facing 1 through 9. Teams in high school, you say, okay, what's the order? And they say 7, 8, and 9, and you think, well, you know, that's the worst hitters on the team. And in college, it's not that way. 7, 8, and 9 might be the best hitters that were on that high school team. So I think that's a big difference in collegiate softball.
Well, as we mentioned, last year was year number one. We're getting ready for year number 2. And though it's a springtime sport, your ball club played 12 games this past fall. Talk about those 12 games, how they came about and how the team did.
Well, we started out, and again with the the freshman recruits that we have, plus we have a girl that actually is a junior status, an outstanding pitcher. We started out a house of fire. I think we won 5 ball games in a row, or 5 or 6. So we felt really, really good at that point. And then we got to play some Division I teams, such as Butler, Indiana State. We played Ball State, but got rained out after 2 innings. And we played Purdue University. We played quite well. We didn't win. We played quite well against the Butler, Indiana State. Purdue kind of put on a clinic for us and showed that what top Division I teams are all about. Fortunately, the coach, Purdue coach, said that this is probably one of the best clubs that she's had in 8 years, and they're ranked 3rd or higher in the Big Ten and maybe 25th in the nation. And she didn't just lay down and kind of quit on us. They came right after us. We scored 1 run. We got beat 12-1, but we just found out what the Division I top teams are like, and we look at that and we know what we have to do in order to become a top team in the country.
Before we go into the makeup of the roster itself, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you and Dennis how you two feel about the switch from going Division II to Division I. Obviously, there are some challenges out there, but your thoughts on the fact that now you're getting to really play with the big boys?
Well, I look at it this way. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the university down the road. You've got to, you got to look ahead. And looking ahead, as far as I'm concerned, the athletes will be able to recruit better athletes. There'll be more scholarship money, and I think it's just going to be a plus for the university overall. And I'm excited.
Dennis, we haven't heard yet from you, but we're going to hear a little bit. Your thoughts?
As far as the recruiting side, when I recruit, we're looking at Division I players anyway. So to me, it doesn't make any difference, 1 or 2. We're always looking for the best athletes we could find, and it will help with additional scholarship money down the road, but just looking for the best athletes you can find at all times.
You say you're always looking for the best athletes, but how are things different now going for strictly Division I players as opposed to last year when you were looking for the best player who may be a D1 but may end up being a D2?
Just that you got to be a little more picky. You get into times, how fast they can run, pitchers, how well they hit their spots, and movement, not how hard they throw, and just overall athletes. Anybody questionable, kind of put to the wayside a little bit.
Well, let's take a look at this year's ball club, and I'm glad you brought a handwritten roster with you, Keith, because
Right.
I don't have that info with me today. But one thing I did notice was that you have no seniors on this club. How might that be a detriment, and how might that be a positive, not having that senior leadership?
Well, we don't have seniors. The seniors that we did have decided not to come back with us this year, and maybe was the different philosophy that I had as far as coaching, and probably some of the recruits that are coming in. So everybody has to play a role on this team, and maybe they felt that their role wasn't a big enough part of the team, and maybe playing time. So, but the juniors, we have good leadership in the junior class. Sophomore class, we have some very aggressive young ladies that, and I look forward to having them for 2 more years after this year. And our freshman class, I'm really excited about. So as far as that senior leadership, I think a freshman could be a tremendous leader if they have that capability. So I know sometimes people say that they have to surround themselves with seniors, and I guess I don't believe in that. I just believe that if you have a good culmination of a lot of great young ladies, then that makes a team. So,
Well, let's take a closer look, and let's begin with juniors, who you have on the ball club.
well, this year we have 4 juniors. Actually, the young lady I was talking about as far as pitching is Maria Brigande. She's actually from Boynton Beach, Florida, and she's probably one of the best left-handed pitchers that I've seen around this area, and I think she'll be very competitive, whether it be Division II or Division I. A tremendous young lady, so we're happy to have her. Then we have Shelley Freilich back. She's a great player for us. She's a utility player. We've been using her in center field quite a bit right now. So, but she can catch, she can play second base, she can just kind of do it all. She's not very big, but she's very aggressive. Sonia Atienzo is our third baseman. We've used her a little bit at shortstop, but she's really our third baseman. And in softball, to play third base, you better have a little intestinal fortitude, because if you're right down there on top of the batters, you know, you got to be a little tough in order to look at those types of things. So she's a tremendous asset, and one of our captains on our team. And the actually fourth junior is actually my daughter that's on the roster. She played as a freshman. She got injured, and she didn't play as a sophomore. She's on the roster this year, and hopefully she'll get some playing time, but we'll see what happens there. The sophomore class, Lori Ferrote, she's one of our outfielders, another captain of our team. We have two captains, and tremendous athlete from Snyder High School here in Fort Wayne, and a very hard worker. Noelle Lavady is a sophomore this year, didn't play last year, came to us this year, and so she's a walk-on, done a tremendous job for us. We used her a little bit in pitching, and she's a tremendous runner, so she's going to be an asset for us also. Julie Bollinger, coming back, freshman last year, did a tremendous job for us. She's played first base, she's played some outfield for us, comes from Elmhurst High School, and just a fine young lady and a good athlete. Crystal Fisher is our catcher. Crystal was with us last year. She's probably one of the better catchers, I would say, in the last year in the conference. She was on the second conference team, all-conference team. Tremendous hitter, probably our best hitter on the team, and a great young lady. Stephanie Roth is a player that we use as a first baseman. We pitched her a little bit last year. She comes from Leo High School, a tremendous working gal. She just puts her heart into everything, and we're just happy to have her. Our freshmen consist of Kristen Light. She comes from Belmont High School. She came to us and is a walk-on, and she is going to help us a little bit in the pitching ranks, and happy to have her. Joanne Marankovich comes from up around the Hammond area, and we recruited her, and she's played shortstop and infield for us, and another fine young lady. Sherry Johnston comes from Kingman, Arizona, and she's our second baseman. Small gal, but very aggressive, a good slap hitter. When we recruited her, actually, we were looking at her, and we got in contact with her, and we said, why would you want to come to Indiana from Arizona?
You're leading. I was gonna ask.
So she said, really, Coach, she says, I looked at the school, and she said, I really want to go to a Big Ten school, but I really don't want to go to a big university. She says, so I know I can receive a Big Ten degree from this university, either IU or Purdue. And she said, second of all, she says, I like the looks of the program and what's happening. And she said, the third thing, she said, I want to experience the winters in Indiana. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And she says, no. She said, I go up in the mountains and I come down. I said, there's no mountains to come down out of in Indiana. So, but a tremendous young lady. And our last freshman, Mindy Pomeroy, and she comes from Mishawaka area, a pitcher. Actually, we didn't recruit her as a pitcher. She was a pitcher in high school. We recruited her as an outfielder, but we got to use her as a pitcher, and she's probably our second mainstay on this team, and did a tremendous job. We played Grace College to start out with, and it was her first game, and she shut them out 4-0, and we've used her along the way, so we're really excited about her, and that's the bulk of the team right now.
Dennis, as pitching coach, what's the biggest challenge that you have with your girls this year?
Well, it's definitely not getting them in the gym to throw. They're in there all the time. They're working hard. Biggest thing is just placement and getting the ball to move a lot more. Mindy has a real good fastball that tails in on right-handers, and she needs to work on her drop ball, so we've been working on that and getting the correct spin on the rise ball. And she also has an excellent changeup. So there hasn't been any problem as far as work ethic at all. It's probably more or less getting the coach there to catch them all the time. But,
how many of the girls do you, I guess the question I want to ask is, are we looking at a 3-person rotation? Or
it's probably a two-person rotation, and we'll start a third one here and there. But the other ones will be in relief, and they just need to keep working. And Noelle, she's working hard, learning a lot of different pitches. A lot of pitchers come out of high school with one pitch because they can throw it by everybody. So now you got to start changing up and start making the ball move a lot more now in the college. So they're learning.
We don't have too much time left in this segment, but I want to put the crystal ball on you.
Okay.
What do you hope to accomplish both from a record standpoint and from an accomplishment standpoint, the intangibles that is not really spoken very much?
Well, we would like necessarily, or we want to have a winning season, but you know, kind of my mainstay is that the gals that I have on the team, I want them to get an education at this university, and I want them to graduate from this university. And I think, being an educator for 31 years, and I think, well, and when Dennis and I recruit young ladies, we look at their GPA, we look at their SATs, the ACT scores, and we're not going to recruit somebody that's not, first of all, a good academic student. And then second of all, then we'll look at their ability to be a good athlete. And when we combine the good athlete and the good academics, then we've got a really solid and good person. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, we wish you well in your endeavor. We thank both of you for coming on the program today. We wish you luck in the coming season. It's going to be an interesting one. And we look forward to having you on the program come springtime as well. We can talk more in depth about the success of the IPFW women's softball team. But thanks again for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our first segment has had the head women's softball coach, Keith Fisher, and his pitching coach, Dennis Smith, with us. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll visit with a couple of members of the team. That's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
They came from every corner of the country. From small towns and big cities. But they all shared one thing in common. They belonged to a family called Marines. A tough and determined few, dedicated to protecting everything we hold sacred. And still they come. Celebrate the 225-year history of those proud few who have earned the title Marine.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. We have with us on this segment a couple of members of this year's women's softball team. To my right is freshman/sophomore Noah Lavity, and to her right is what I call a true freshman, Mindy Pomeroy. Ladies, welcome to Mastodon Spotlight.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Noelle, we'll begin with you.
It's my second year at IPFW. I'm an elementary education major. I walked on this fall to the softball team. I live in Fort Wayne now. I graduated from Cherubusco in '99.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Mindy?
I'm also an elementary education major. I graduated just this past spring from Mishawaka Marian High School. And that's it.
To each of you, what led you to come here to IPFW for school?
For me, I initially came because you get a good degree and it's affordable. Like 4 years here is cheaper than 1 year at IU, and I'm going to be getting my degree at IU. So that was very appealing.
Mindy?
I mainly came because of the softball team, but one of the schools I was considering was IU, so knowing that I can get an IU degree is no different. It was cheaper and it's smaller, which is what I'm used to. So.
How many schools recruited you?
Mainly IPFW, and then there are a few other Division III schools and a couple Division II schools.
Obviously, you don't still live in Mishawaka, so what's it like being away from home?
I really like it. I'm not homesick at all. I live with Sherry Johnston in Canterbury. We have a good time. It's a lot of fun.
Both of you happen to be pitchers. Talk about the art of pitching, if you can. What's your favorite pitch? What do you have to work on? And what's the thrill about throwing that softball?
I think no matter how good you get, there's always room for improvement. I have lots of room for improvement, but you go in and practice and keep on working at it, and the more you work at it, the better you get. And I think being a softball player, if you get put anywhere on the field, your adrenaline's pumping for every game, and I missed that a lot my freshman year. That's why I walked on this year. And like, no matter where you get put, it's always great to be in the game, but I don't think that there's any position similar to what you feel when you pitch. So I'm really excited about this year.
Mindy?
I think pitching is addicting. I think once you start, you can't stop. I didn't pitch my first 3 years of high school, really, and I missed it a lot. So I was really excited my senior year. When I came here and got an opportunity, I was excited. I have a lot of room for improvement. I really need to work on focusing. I can't pay attention for very long when I'm pitching. In game situations, I'm okay, but in practice, my mind kind of wanders, so I have to work on that. And I also need to develop more pitches. So.
Speaking of that, how many pitches do you actually throw? What I mean by that, a lot of people think fastball, obviously. Some people throw the changeup or drop pitch. How many do you throw? And also talk about what Coach Smith is trying to work with you on.
With me, he's working a lot on my rise ball. I had one out of high school. I guess it stopped working or whatever, so we're doing it, and I'm working on getting the spin right, and I'm also working really hard on my drop ball. And out of high school, I basically had a changeup and a fastball that were effective, and so we're working on adding to that right now.
What type of pitches do you throw?
I'm confident in my fastball. And my changeup, it's usually all right as long as I've been practicing. And then Coach Smith's been working with me on the rise ball and getting the spin so it jumps up when it's supposed to.
Talk, if you can, for a moment, ladies, about the game itself. We had a chance, well, a lot of us had a chance to watch during the previous Olympics, the women's softball team. And they came from behind. They were heavy favorites, had won 112 games in a row, lost 3 games in a row, but still were able to get to the medal round and ended up winning the tournament. But when you look at softball, it's more speed and defense and pitching than it is power. Talk about the game itself.
I see softball, it's kind of like a big puzzle. Like, everyone's a piece, and like, if you have one piece missing, it's not going to be complete. So as long as we have everyone there trying their hardest with their heart that want to play, then I think you'll do fine, and we'll do fine as a team. And of course, pitching's important, power's important, but when everyone's putting all they can into it and they have the desire to play, I think that's where it all comes from. Because even if you were the most awesome player in the world and you didn't really have the desire to play, you just did it because you did it, I don't think you could amount to anything as a mediocre player that played with all their heart.
I think there's a lot of different aspects of softball than there is in baseball, especially offensively. In softball, you have slappers and you have power hitters too, and then you have your hitters that are just going to be consistent and make contact. On our team, we have Sherry Johnston, who's a great slapper, and then we have Crystal Fisher, who's got a lot of power, and then there's a lot of other batters that just make contact and move the runners around. So it's more like a base-to-base game than home runs like you always see in baseball.
Does the type of hitter that you face dictate as to what pitch you get to, you're going to throw? For example, the power hitter is going to be waiting for the fastball.
Yeah.
And the slapper may be waiting for the changeup. When you have that type of hitter and you know that that type of hitter is coming up to the plate, what's in your mind and in the mindset of what you want to accomplish?
When I have a slapper, I know I want to throw it low and outside because it's hard for them. They're either going to pop it up or they're not going to get it to where they want it. And a power hitter, you mostly want to keep everything down unless you know that they can hit the down pitch. Down and out's usually good, or in. You want to throw them a lot of junk because they can hit the fastball no matter where you throw it if they're that good.
Noelle?
Same thing with a power hitter. Definitely keep it low. And I like keeping it on the inside just because I know as a batter I hate it when the balls come inside, so it's harder to get the full swing and make as much contact as you would have if it would have been right down the middle. And with slappers, keep them outside because it's harder for them to reach, and then they pop up a lot.
We're almost out of time in this segment, but I will ask one final question, and that question is, what are your goals for this coming season, both as a team and as an individual? Noelle, I'll start with you.
As an individual, I hope to improve my pitching because then with a year off, it wasn't like it used to be, but I feel that I'm going down the road and I want to be better than I was also, have more pitches, better accuracy, and more speed. As a team, I hope we all get along and we can make this, get the most wins that we have had ever any season while having fun doing it too. And that's it, I think.
Well put. Mindy?
For a team goal, I think that we just really want to work hard and play together and have a lot of fun, but I also think we need to mainly focus on winning, and I think that we have a potential to be really good and very successful in the conference. Individually, I want to work on a lot of my pitching, and I also want to work a lot on hitting. I think I didn't do as well as I wanted to in the fall, and that's something I really want to focus on.
Well, we thank you very much for coming on the program today, and we wish you much success in the coming season and seasons, as you both have a lot of years of eligibility left here at IPFW. And thanks again and good luck.
Thanks.
Our guests have been Mindy Pomeroy and Noelle Lavity, two members of this year's women's softball team. Time for a break, and when we come back, it's baseball time with head coach Billy Gernon. That's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment. Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. In this segment, we get a chance to chat with perhaps the funniest coach on campus here at IPFW, and that is none other than head men's baseball coach Billy Gernon. Billy, welcome back.
I appreciate that disclaimer, Mike. It's good to be back. Good to be back. Even though there's snow on the ground a little bit today, good to be back talking baseball.
Let's talk baseball. Last year, year number one of the Billy Gernon. What am I thinking of? Richie Guerin, NBA basketball player. Billy
No
Gernon.
relation, by the way.
No relation.
That's right.
Darn, thought it was a
It's all right.
offbeat, distant relative. You're number one of your regime here at IPFW. As we spoke about a moment ago before we came on air with this segment, technically 21 and 25 overall, 12 and 15 in the conference. Team was better than the record indicated.
Yeah, it was, Mike. I think there was a transitional period that occurred last year with a brand new head coach, brand new assistant coaches, a few new faces from transfers, 6 or 7 players that had left and had attempted a career at Dayton where Vittorio had gone, which we understood completely. But we had a completely restructuring and rekindling job to do. And I think it was indicative in our performance early, and we all took responsibility for it, the coaches and the players, to start out 0-7. And those victories, or those, I should say, those defeats early in the season were games where we just did not perform well. You know, our whole motto is we don't mind as much losing a baseball game when we've played as the best that we can play, and that we can look at one another and say, you know, we just got beat. And that didn't happen in any of those 7 games, with the exception of maybe Miami of Ohio, who was a very, very good baseball team last year. And then afterwards, you know, after those 7 games, we picked up our pace, had a stretch where we won 8 in a row, which included a win at Ball State, and really had a successful year from that point on. We ended up going 17-4 at home. We're a very dangerous team at home. And then had a chance to get in the conference tournament last year at Indianapolis, going in there 12-12, needed 2 wins and got swept 3 games. You know, 2 games by 1 run. And as a coach, you know, you say, well, we got beat by 1 or we got beat by... We got beat. And they were flat out a good baseball team. They're ranked 6th preseason right now. So, you know, last year's team had 3 different faces, 1 getting to know each other, 2 starting to play as we were getting to know each other, and 3 as we came together. We actually, I think, presented to one another what our ability level was, and I'm expecting and anticipating that this will carry on into this season coming up with a lot of returning players coming back.
Before we talk about the makeup of this year's ball club, I would be remiss. We've talked to a number of the other coaches in prior programs. This has been a unique fall, to say the least. The school year began with IPFW being a member of NCAA Division II. Now we're in the process of going to Division I. A lot of helter-skelter. How did this ruling affect your ball club?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's been more of an emotional effect on the programs than anything, and I think this would be a good time to send out a special congratulations to Kelly Hartley of the women's volleyball team and her 3 seniors, Courtney Boysenette, Tammy Ish, and Laura Douglas, for their all-conference awards that they received, and for Laura being Player of the Year in the GLVC. Only players that played last year that were in the conference were eligible for those awards, and even though knowing Coach Hartley and the other seniors not interested in individual accolades as much as they are team performance, I still think that we ought to tip our hat to them for persevering through what was a very difficult year, and I think it's representative of the integrity of the coaching staff and the character of her players. And I think this would be a good time to say congratulations to them on that. But yeah, you're right, Mike. We were fortunate, the baseball team was, that academically we had a few guys that were in the gray areas, and that doesn't mean that they were bad students. It means that because of the change, and I'm sure it's been discussed on your previous shows, that NCAA Division II is a 12-hour 2.0 progression for eligibility per semester, where the NCAA Division I, and the major change comes in this, that after 5 semesters you have to have 25% of your degree completed, after 7 semesters 50%, and then after 9 semesters 75%. Well, we had a kid on the dean's list in business who's a senior who did not have 75%. So it's really an irony thing, where you've got a kid that's got a 3.7 ACUM in the business department, but he's ineligible. So we've taken care of some things, and I'd like to thank Doc Skelton and Rita Gerardo in the compliance office. It's been a very difficult year for them, but you know, everybody just kind of bowed their neck a little bit and dug in and worked together as a team in the department. And I think that the water's starting to pacify a little bit, and we're looking forward to the opportunities that exist here.
Let's take a look at this year's ball club.
Let's do that.
Who you have coming back, and a little bit about each of them.
Well, excitingly, what I'm gonna do is introduce some real key pitchers that are coming back. We're bringing back 4 senior pitchers from last year. Chris Bloom, a right-handed pitcher from DeKalb, went to Morehead State and transferred in here and did extremely well last year as a junior. Has committed himself to working out a little bit more in the summer and off season, and is in better shape than I think he's ever been in, and we're expecting some big things with him, along with Brian Boggs, who's a left-handed senior pitcher. Last year was Great Lakes Valley Conference second team and had a phenomenal season, including a 10-inning, 5-hit shutout where he got a no decision against St. Joe at Wizard Stadium. We ended up winning that game 1-0 in 12 innings. Jason Collins, who was 2-5 last year, but pitchers' records are often indicative of their ability and often not, and 2-5 is not representative of Jason. He's also a left-handed pitcher that came here from Wabash Valley Junior College. He's out of Evansville, Indiana, and his nickname's a Bulldog because he competes with great vibrancy on the mound, and we can always count on him to battle for us, along with the guys that I've mentioned previously. But Collins has got just a little more of that recipe for getting after it, just in his personal makeup. And then Steve Butcher's also a left-handed pitcher that came in here. All these guys were recruits by Vittorio, and he did a good job with them, and we've developed them, we think, to another level where they all can command 3 pitches in any zone that they want, and we're expecting a lot from those 4 pitchers actually this year. Nick Taycash is a returning junior. He was a member of the Penn State Championship team 4A in 1998. He's going to give us some good innings, along with another pitcher, Jason Horvath, who's a freshman, who's come in from Mishawaka, Marion. Jason goes about 6'3", close to 200 pounds, and was virtually almost unhittable except for a couple mistakes in the fall. So we see a bright future from him. One other pitcher from the Mishawaka area, Tony Wilson, also a freshman. Tony is kind of a crafty right-handed kid, doesn't overpower anybody. He's got a real good off-speed stuff, and he keeps the hitters off balance, so he's going to blend in well. And then another pitcher, Ben Sline from Plymouth, and Plymouth was the 3A state runner-up to Jasper in 2000 last year, and he's demonstrated some real good arm strength from the outfield, so we've been working him off the mound a little bit to help maybe take some pressure off. But let me run through the names real quick. Justin Bazinski is a freshman third baseman that's in from Mishawaka. Justin was 4A All-State honorable mention as a third baseman, hit over 400, and he's starting to come along pretty well. Josh Byers is a freshman who transferred here from Dayton. He was originally an IPFW recruit, went to Dayton when Vittorio did, and has returned and is playing second base and is a real nice addition to the club for us. Derek Day is a catcher. He's from Mishawaka also. He's a 6', 180 freshman who struggled a little bit this fall, but through perseverance and then working hard, I think Derek's come a long way. Ernie Gum, freshman from New Albany High School. Ernie was a member of the South All-Star team last year that played here in the Wizard Stadium. He's going to be red-shirted with an elbow problem. We're going to miss him a little bit, but it'll be nice to pick him up the following year. Do we have time to run through all these? You want
we don't get this segment, we'll get in the next segment.
Okay. Rich Hale is a senior returning catcher, and Rich has been plagued by the injury bug worse than anybody I've ever seen in my life. He dislocated a knee last year. He had a nightstick break that happened with a baseball hitting his wrist this summer, and it really just kind of caved the bone in. As soon as he got that healed up, he started back with us 2 weeks ago, and just making a movement in the gym blew out his ACL, it looks like. We'll find out next week. So our thoughts are with Rich and hope that he can get recovered well enough to get back this season. Nate Hoggett, junior, returning third baseman. He's from Wayne High School. Nate had a good year for us last year. Nate's one of the quickest players I've ever seen, and one more of the athletic players that I've been around as a player and a coach. And we've got some real high expectations from him this year. Dustin Johnson, a freshman in here from Wapahani High School. Dustin hit 14 home runs last year. He hit 10 as a junior in high school and ended up with 24 career, or actually, yeah, he had 26 career home runs in high school, which is quite a few. And he's an excellent student in the engineering program and works really hard, and we're glad to have him here. Shannon Kimmel, he along with Brad Smock were appointed by me as captains for the fall. The team will elect 2 captains in the winter. They may elect Brad and Shannon. We don't know that yet. But Shannon has a tremendous work ethic. He'll be playing first base and really battles for us at the plate. Joel Lesher, center fielder. He's from Leo High School. Joel's going to see a little more playing time this year. He's a very good defensive player, and he does real well at the plate. We're going to expect Joel to be a little more patient and be a table setter, leadoff type guy for us. And if he's able to do that, he'll see a lot more playing time. Just a few more here. Doug McDonald's a right-handed pitcher from West Noble High School. Doug was Prep Player of the Year in that Cornerstone Conference up there with West Noble and Angola. He had 105 strikeouts in 51 innings and is really a power pitcher, and he has a back injury and is going to be redshirted this year along with the Gum kid. So Gum and McDonald were players that were really brought here to be impact players as freshmen, but they've been serious in their rehab and their injuries, and we feel that the following year that they'll be nice contributors to our program. I already mentioned Ben Sline. Mark Szymanski was a teammate of Ben Sline's. They both played at Plymouth. Mark's a shortstop. He's a freshman with tremendous athletic ability. We feel like that he's progressed through the fall well enough that he's going to be taking most of the responsibility at shortstop as a freshman. He was heavily recruited by me, and we're glad that he's here. Along with great work ethic, he's a really good kid and good in the classroom as well. Brad Smock. Brad's a senior catcher returning. He transferred back here from Purdue after leaving Carroll High School to go there and thought his fortune would be better for him in Fort Wayne, and I think it was a good move for him. As I said, we appointed him as a captain in the fall. We have real high expectations for Brad this year as well as he does for himself, and expect some good things from him on the field. Pete Warfel is a senior left fielder returning. He transferred from Kentucky. Pete was a nice contributor for us last year, and we expect Pete to bump some numbers up in average and maybe put a little more pressure with Pete on the bases, as he's a good threat to steal and with his excellent quickness. Last but not least, the hardest working player that I've ever been witness to in any realm of sports, Jason Widmar, is a junior. He was also a member of the Penn State Championship team in 1998. And Jason will be battling for time in center field and also in right field. And he adds more competition to the outfield for us. And he's going to be a tough guy to beat out of the lineup if he keeps doing the things that he's doing right now. Good kid in the classroom and is a tremendous leader because of his work ethic. But sorry that was so short. But I'm glad that we were able to get each guy's name in. And real quick, Brandon Martin's back as my head assistant coach. He's a New Haven kid. We're thankful to have him again. He does a lot for us. Brian Scott, a senior from last year's team, is a volunteer assistant. And then the last person I didn't mention, and I've got to mention his name, Blaine McFerrin, was going to be a senior this year and had Tommy John surgery in June. He's kind of working in a player-coach role with us, helping us out with study tables and different things. And his rehab's coming along really well. And we're looking forward to having him next year. Unfortunately, we're not going to have him this year. But his surgery went well, and his recovery looks like it's going to be a good one. So,
well, that's a quick look at this year's roster. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about an event that took place in late September that involved professional scouts, and we'll look ahead to see what this coming season shows, what kind of promise it shows, and where things may or may not end up. But that's when we come back in just a moment with more of Mastodon Spotlight.
Today's teenagers, the way people talk, you'd think they can't do anything right. Just not so. We get to know over 300,000 kids a year. Smart kids who know what they want. They believe in themselves, and they believe in America. Some go straight to college. Others choose to learn leadership, discipline, courage, and commitment first with us. Today's military, making a stronger America, one good kid at a time.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Our guest this time around is the head baseball coach here at IPFW, Billy Gernon. And Billy, we just talked about the roster of this year's ball club. I need to ask a question. You mentioned a lot of players from the Plymouth, Mishawaka, South Bend area. What is it that makes that area such a hotbed in high school baseball that get a lot of players over here?
Well, that's a really good question, and we've discussed this, the coaches have, and we have kind of found a hotbed. There's a lot of high schools up there, and, you know, with our recruiting limitations, we really try to focus on in-state players. And we just started to kind of pursue our endeavors for recruiting up in that area, and it just began to kind of matriculate itself into being like you said, a hotbed for recruiting. The Mishawaka school's up there. Penn is a humongous high school, probably one of the bigger ones in the state. Mishawaka Marion, where the Horvath kid is from, and South Bend Riley. I mean, you could just South Bend Adams. You could just go on. And so there's just a lot of big schools, kind of like Fort Wayne. But what we're finding out, and I remember being this way myself in high school, that you don't want to play typically in your hometown, even if it were UCLA sitting right here. I think that kids typically want to go away. One, so that they can feel some independence and get away from home. Two, so that their friends, you know, in high school, it's a big thing. I'm going away, and, you know, even if it's down the road to Ball State, which is 45 minutes to an hour, I think the kids like to get away. So we don't have a lot of success with the local kids, but, you know, when you go to South Bend, IPFW is now a Division I school that's reclassifying. It's away from home. We've got great living arrangements, and it becomes more attractive. You know, that old saying, you know, you search all over the world to find out the best thing was always in your backyard. Those kids sometimes end up coming back. I think Brad Smock's a good example of that. And Brad should have been heavily recruited here if he wasn't. I don't know if he was. But there's a lot of good players in this area, and I think it's synonymous to the South Bend area. So I think that's what gives us some more fortune, having it be almost 2 hours away. So... but that's where I think most of our luck is coming from, that area.
You mentioned the recruiting process. Granted, it's been a short period of time since we've gone from theoretically D2 to D1.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest difference you're finding in recruiting right now?
As far as where I'm changing?
What changes do you have to make? What restrictions are there? Or what type of player that you might have been looking at from one side of the coin now you can't look at anymore, and vice versa? Well,
fortunately, last year I felt that this move was inevitable, and we kind of began our recruiting phase under those specifications. And I would say 75% of the kids that we signed are going to be able to compete at the Division I level. But what we're looking for is you have to pay a little more attention to academics, because the standards, the SAT scores have to correspond with a sliding grade point average now, as before. You needed a 2.0 in high school and an 820 SAT. The lower the SAT, the higher the grade point averages. So we have to focus on those numbers a little bit more. But really what we're doing is trying to pick up a little bit on the talent level where a kid could come in here and do real well as a Division II player. We want a kid now that would be a impact player Division II, or a contributor Division I, mid-major Division I, as a freshman, so that they can develop. But like I said, we've brought in some freshmen that we feel that are going to jump right into a contributing role in a mid-major Division I program. So, yeah, we do have to kind of upgrade the talent level along with the academic, and it's a dual responsibility, and it's difficult. I mean, there's 11 other schools in the state, Division I, Evansville, Indiana State, IU, Purdue, Valparaiso, Butler, IU, PUI. I mean, the list goes on and on. The competition is, and every one of those programs I listed has a very reputable and respected coach. So the competition it's fierce, but that's what makes it exciting. That's why we do it.
I want to talk about an event that took place back on September 27th. And I know you mentioned off air it hopes to become an annual event, but you call it Scout Day,
mm-hmm.
and you had some professional scouts here on the campus. Talk a little bit about that day, how it evolved, and what transpired.
Well, it was the first annual here on campus. NCAA rules do not allow, for instance, some of the NAIA schools in town here get together at one field, and their kids will put on like a pro camp tryout. Scouts will come in and they'll get to see a lot of different players. Well, the restrictions in NCAA say that it's got to be on your campus for one. It's got to be run as a practice. And the scouts are allowed to come in. They can walk around the field and watch players. We set it up just like a pro team would if you went to try out, let's say, for the Braves that were holding a camp somewhere in Indianapolis or even in Fort Wayne. You start out running the 60-yard dash. The pro scouts are looking for times that are 7:0 or better. And then we go into the outfielders all throwing from right field to third base and into home so that they can show arm strength. Infielders throwing deep from shortstop all across to first baseman all across to third. Then the catchers will throw their times from home to second. And then we play a little quick scrimmage game so that the scouts can see the pitchers and get their radar guns on them. And it was good. It wasn't as big as we would have liked. The turnout was, 4 to 5 scouts, but and we sent out probably 60 different invitations, and we tried to coordinate our scout day respectfully around Purdue, Indiana, and some of those bigger mid-major schools are going to draw the scouts before we will, and we realize that. Maybe not in a couple years from now, and that's our aspirations for that to happen. But I think the good thing was that it's been set in motion. It's going to be an annual event, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there were a couple of individuals that had a very good day and have caused some scouts probably to make some marks in their books to keep track of them. And that's what we want. We want our kids, first, to get a degree from here, 2, to have a tremendous baseball experience, and 3, if they're fortunate enough, because of how hard they've worked, to be able to get to that next level that they've dreamt of doing since they were little kids,
Let's talk now. We don't have too much time left, but let's talk about this upcoming season. First and foremost, you're lucky. You get to start the season down south.
Yes.
In Lakeland, Florida, Tiger Town, Detroit Tigers training campsite, with a handful of games. What's it like being able, not only you're playing other teams, but you get a chance to watch the major and minor leagues in action?
As a baseball fan, since I was a kid, I've never had a chance to do that. I've been in a lot of different pro stadiums and seen a lot of different pro games, but I have not had a chance to just hang out all day and watch spring training. So this is going to be something new for me, too. And most of our players haven't had this opportunity. We're going to fly down to Tampa, take the guys over to Lakeland, Florida, where we play Florida Southern, who's ranked in the top 10 Division II, Tampa. These are both teams that have won national titles. They're ranked top 10. But their games are set at night so that we could play under the lights. Hopefully the weather will be, conducive to that. And then we're going to watch spring training during the day. I mean, the Tigers are right there in Lakeland, and the Phillies are over in Clearwater, which is only 45 minutes away. So we're really excited about that. We're going to be playing some great competition. We're considered a cold weather school here in the Midwest, so we're going to get out of the cold weather. And it really gives our guys, it kind of takes a mental factor away from fighting the temperature and the element so much, and give them just an environment to play hard, hot weather, see some pro ball. Before I quit here, I always get a dig at somebody, and I usually give a dig after I've been dug at. And Keith Fisher, the women's softball coach, as I walked in here today, as a 33-year-old coach with a leaving hairline, he said to me, you better get some powder on that head. I'd just like to make a point, Coach Fisher, that your head doesn't actually look like a chia pet yourself. So I'm glad that I got that out, and I wish you a good season. But anyway, go ahead, Mike.
You always know how to stop somebody in their tracks, I got to admit. You get to play down south, and then you come back north. Besides the GLVC schedule, which is tough as it is, you do have some other Division I opponents that you are going to get a chance to play this year.
Yes, we do. We're going to get a chance to play Toledo this year, going to get a chance to play Butler, and looks like we're going to get to play IUPUI. So we've got some Division I schools on track this year, but the GLVC schedule is going to be just as tough. As I said, Indianapolis is ranked 6th in the nation. Quincy will inevitably be ranked. And real quick about the GLVC, Mike, this year, they voted us that we cannot win it, but I think they made a mistake by saying that we could play the spoiler role. So that gives our guys some extra fuel and some added initiative to work hard and knock some teams out that maybe have been knocking us around in the last few years to keep them from having a berth at the tournament. Now, we're not going to do that vindictively. We're going to do it with sportsmanship and by playing hard. But obviously, if we're looking for something to play for, it'd be like a high school kid being told that there was no sectional. So, and my guys have handled that real well, and I tip my hat to them for handling it. But we're going to go to some parks and we're going to play the spoiler role, and that's what's going to keep us elevated to play at a heightened level that we need to play at.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Gosh, I always enjoy it when you come on this show.
Time flies.
It's a laugh a minute, but
Yep.
it is very enjoyable. We wish you well this coming season.
Thanks a lot,
We look
Mike.
forward to having you on several times.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
If not for the ball club, for the humor. But thanks again.
Thank you, Mike.
Billy Gernon's been our guest, head baseball coach here at IPFW. And as I said, that's it for this edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Thanks again to Coach Gernon, Coach Keith Fisher, Coach Dennis Smith, and our two ladies that participated today, Noel Lavity and Mindy Pomeroy as well. And again, as always, we thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. We invite you to come back next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until then, this is Mike Moss saying, have a great week and go Dons. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, our theme is to look back and look forward. The first half of the show, we're going to look back at the accomplishments of the men's and women's soccer teams this past season. And in the second half of the show, we'll look ahead to the men's volleyball season. The show is called Mastodon Spotlight, and it's coming up next.
Imagine what it feels like to be a hero every day. You can make a difference in the Coast Guard. Jobs that matter. Search and rescue, saving lives. You're answering the call. It's a job that matters, where you can do it all. Coast Guard. Jobs that matter. Imagine what it feels like. Imagine what it feels like.
Join the United States Coast Guard or the Coast Guard Reserve. Stop drugs. Save lives. Protect the environment. Be a hero every day.
Imagine what it feels like. You can do it all.
Call toll-free 1-877-NOW-USCG. The Coast Guard. Jobs that matter.
Coast Guard. Jobs that matter.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Moss. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Well, as I said a moment ago, we're going to take a look back at the men's and women's soccer team's performance this past season. And our first guest today is the head coach of both the men's and women's soccer teams, Terry Stefankowitz. Terry, welcome back to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk first about the women's team. And I know we've had you on previous shows, a unique situation where you took over the women's program, a team that was 0-16 in its first season of existence a year ago. And this year, much better performance on the field, 5-12, 3-8 in conference play. Let's take a brief look back at the team's season, and then we'll talk about some of the individuals on the team.
Well, obviously it is an improved team with 5 victories. Never satisfied with a losing season. I'd like to talk about how the season ended. You know, we've talked about preceding games because of the show in the past, but we played Saginaw Valley here at home, and it was a cold day, and the girls had really gotten beat badly up in Michigan the preceding game. And I really didn't know how it was going to work out because they were really down and it was the last game, and there was a good chance that they could just play out the game and end the season. And we got together, instead of a practice, I bought pizza for the girls in the last game, and I said, there's nothing I can do right now to change this. Let's just have some fun and let's end on a good note. And it was probably the hardest that they've played all season. Start to finish, they ended up losing the game, but let me tell you the story here. We had Shasina Hersey, the score's tied 1-1. 2 minutes left in the game, and Shasina gets this breakaway. And she's going to goal, and she beats the sweeper, and all she has left is the goalkeeper. Shasina has probably the hardest shot of any girl I have ever seen. As a matter of fact, Ian Luya stood in goal one day, and he says, I'm not getting in goal anymore. She was hurting my hands. So Shasina's got this breakaway. Goalkeeper comes out, and unfortunately for Shasina, she mishit it, and the ball went to the side. That was a possibility for the victory with 2 minutes left. So they get the goal kick and they work the ball, bing, bing, bing up the field, and they shoot and they score with 1:10 seconds left, and we lose 2-1. But it was a heartbreaking loss, but yet when every girl left the field, they knew that each of the players contributed 100%. It was the first time all season that I saw where everybody played one of their best games. And it was a great way to end the season. Even though we lost, I could see where we had turned the corner. They had some direction. They knew how to play. The physicalness was there. The togetherness was there. And we're returning 10 girls. Now, a year ago, we only had 2 girls returning. So we're very, very optimistic about the future. We're recruiting hard now. And I think that our attitude going into Division I in this transition period is going to be exactly the opposite of the men's. We're not going to redshirt any of the women. We're going to try to take this women's team, bring in some new recruits, and have the strongest team we can. We want them to have a taste of a winning season. I have a schedule here. We already have 17 games scheduled, and Mike Harper, my assistant's done a great job of putting this together. But listen to some of these teams. We have Oakland University out of Michigan, which is an excellent team. Michigan State is coming here. DePaul, Marshall, Morehead State, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Butler, Valparaiso, Northwestern, Ball State. So now the level of competition, we've raised that bar. The girls are weight training 3 days a week. They're out helping me find recruits. Our attention with the women and the men is the local kids and the Indiana kids first, and then we'll look at other areas. I can't give any names, but hopefully we're going to sign one of the top players in Fort Wayne on the women's side. I know she has it down to 2 schools, and I think she's leaning our way, but I can't tell you who it is, and she hasn't given me 100% commitment yet. But that would be a big plus for us. So we're talking to a lot of girls who can come right in and help. This past weekend, I went to Indianapolis for the senior soccer showcase, and they had 5 regions in the state of Indiana, and each region had a team of juniors and seniors. The level of play in the state of Indiana on the women's side has escalated tremendously. I thought I'd go down there and see 1 or 2 girls on each team, and I saw 8, 9, 10 good players, and that's really, really good that we have that kind of recruiting base in the state of Indiana.
If we take away the W's and the L's, what is the biggest improvement that you saw on your team from the beginning of the season through the end of the season?
The women's team changed their focus. They came in and they worked really, really hard. And I thought that their attitude was great. They had a couple non-season victories in the preseason, so they tasted what it was like to win. And then the opening day they won, so that they were at a high point. And then they got to the point where they started losing. And they lost several games, and they had that feeling of dejection. So it was kind of a roller coaster. And now, like I said, at the end of the season, finally I saw where the physicalness was there on everybody's part, and that's what it takes. You know, you're only as strong as the weakest link in soccer. and everybody played hard. So hopefully that attitude is going to carry over into the off season and into next year. So to answer your question, I can't really say what was the differential, except that I've seen this, and hopefully we're on the way up, and that's a good thing.
Let's take a look now, and we always strive for the team. There is no I in team. However, there were some excellent individual performances during the course of the season. And let me start right off the bat with the person who we had on the show earlier, a recruit, if you want to say it, from the volleyball team, your goalie, Jody Schnelker.
Well, Jody played a tremendous role. Last year, the team got beat double digits over and over again, 10-0, 9-0, 11-0. The worst defeat that we had was a 3-goal differential this year, and Jody Schnelker, who never played soccer in her life, she didn't know the rules to the game, came out and took a role on the team that is so crucial because she's our last line of defense. She has good hands, and she's quick, and she's mentally tough, and she doesn't like to lose. That's the one thing Jody brought to this team. She hated to lose. That mental attitude was win, 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 win. And that rubbed off on a lot of the girls. And she's a little older. She's a fifth-year senior, and that was important because we had a team full of freshmen. So she brought maturity, and she brought the ability to catch the ball. And so many of the girls, when a shot is taken, if you have confidence in your goalkeeper, you know that that's an easy save. A goalkeeper that lets an easy one go by, the entire team gets down. The girls had confidence in Jody, and for someone who never played the game, we wish we had her for the next 3 years. She did a great job for us.
Talk about some of the other players.
Well, Molly McHenry was our sweeper. She's an ODP player from Ohio. She's a sophomore, straight A student. She's taken 18 hours, and she's going to get all A's, or she has all A's right now. She's a tall, thin girl, and she's probably the meanest, toughest girl we have on the team. She tackles really hard, and she's a very intelligent player, and she's the leader in the back. She communicates well, and the girls respect her because she is smart and she reads the play real well. I'm excited because we have just about all of our defense coming back. Katie Leahy's a freshman from Cincinnati. Olivia Dutka is from Michigan, and Andrea Capelli from Snyder High School, along with Molly McHenry, gives us a great nucleus for our defense next year. We'll probably move some of those players around next year because we'll have additional players, but as a group, they gelled real well together. From game to game, we would move poor Katie Leahy around because Katie Leahy, even though she was a freshman, technically, she is probably our best player in terms of collecting balls and serving balls and seeing the field, and she got the ball into dangerous areas, and she's got a great shot as well. So she did a really, really great job. The last game of the year, Andrea Capelli, she was playing wing fullback. Next thing I know, she's in attack all the time. She was making 50-yard runs going forward. She hit the post twice and made another great shot, but the goalkeeper saved it. So she has a lot of speed, and she's really tenacious. We'd like to have her in the midfield next year. Olivia Dutka is a physical presence. She's a hard tackler. She's got a great left foot for on the women's side, and she did a really good job at the end of the year. As a matter of fact, Molly McHenry was out the last game, and Olivia had to sweep, and she did a great job. So the defense looks good. Jenna Kelly from Michigan is our center midfielder, and Maureen Kelsey, they played side by side. Maureen is a short passing type of girl, and Jenna Kelly is go, 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 go 90 miles an hour, and she really got us into attack towards the end of the season. And being a freshman, I think she learned a lot about what it takes to get the ball forward. And then we had the two girls from Massachusetts that scored all of our goals except for two, and that's Kristen McDonald and Shasina Hersey. Shasina is a big, strong girl rocket shot, and Christine, which is a technical player. She can shoot the ball right-footed, left-footed. She was the leading scorer, and she probably could have had 10 other goals, but freshman situations, and I look for great things from them in the future.
Well, congratulations on the women's side for a season well done. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to shift gears and talk about the men's program. And that's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Watch me fly, gonna go real far, gonna touch the sky. Be a part of the future, you know how. Get tech, cause the future is now.
Calculus, datum, logarithm, job potential, exponential. Junior high, E equals MC squared. Later on, I could be a millionaire.
Stop the sickness, benefit, get tech.org on the net. Math and science, no regrets, cause the whole world's set when the girls get tech. Get tech, everybody get tech, everybody get tech.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Our theme on the first half of today's show is soccer. We just spoke about the women's soccer season recently completed, and now we're going to talk again with the head coach of men's as well as women's soccer, Terry Stefankowitz, about the men's season. Men's soccer, a season that began full of promise, hopes, and expectations. Things didn't work out quite the way you wanted to.
No, we went through a little bit of turmoil. Some kids were ineligible when we became Division I. Some of our older players are players that we were relying on for leadership. When you look at the whole season, we still had 10 wins and 3 losses were in double overtime right at the end of the game against top-notch teams. So even though it didn't work out the way we had originally planned, I think it wasn't a bad season. I see some really promising things from some of our younger players. I would like to say goodbye on the show to our seniors, Jeff Ritchie, Brian Knitter, Clint Canablo, and James Ryland. Those guys, part of our family, will always remember what they did here.
If you can take it just one step further with those 4 individuals, what was the one key ingredient that each of them supplied to the team?
There's really different individuals. Richie and Knitter played together as junior high, high school, and college. They were sweeper, goalkeeper combination. So they were, we called them peanut butter and jelly. That's the way I looked at them. They believed in each other. They knew each other. The communication was excellent. Canablo brought to the team the physical toughness. He's the best tackler we've ever had here at IPFW. James Ryland was fancy. He made the tackles. He could get the ball forward. He's very dangerous in attack. So they each brought a different element. But the great thing is, because they had played together for 4 years, they knew each other. And whenever a team tried to take the ball away from them, they positioned themselves so that they could, as a matter of fact, they would bait teams. They're like, come on, we dare you to come back here and try and get it from us. We're going to change our style because we'll have different people in the back. We predicated our attack on the backs, knocking around, finding openings, and so we're going to have to change, but it was a great 4 years with them.
If we can just move slightly, we talk about the 4 seniors, and we talk about, you mentioned Jeff Ritchie, All-American goalie, plain and simple. And yet there are silver linings. Unfortunately, Jeff was injured at the beginning of the season. but you had a chance to find out a possible replacement.
Yeah, we did. Martin Bertels came in. He was a freshman. He got thrown into the IU game in the showcase and did a great job. Made some acrobatic saves, and then we threw him to the Wolves the next day against Duke. But it did give him an opportunity to wet his whistle, if you will, and see what it was like at this level.
If you can, Terry, we mentioned the 4 seniors. We now mentioned Martin Bertels. Talk about the other players and their roles on this year's team.
Well, I'd like to talk about the future. And by talking about the future, I can talk about some of these guys. We're going to redshirt, and that's why in the beginning of the show I talked about the women are not redshirting the men. We're going to redshirt 8 players, and Pete Ivancevich, Scott Bailey, Ian Luya, John Skonecki, Derek Laliberty, Sean Carrier, Nick Pendleton, and Mr. Buck from Louisville, Kentucky. They were all the goals from last season except for Kramer's, and Kramer we'll talk about in a minute. They will be juniors and seniors a year from now. They will train with us next year, but we've decided that if we're going to be in a conference, we want to go out and try and win a conference title right away. And having 8 seasoned veterans coming in will really, really help us. So that group of guys will continue to work, and they'll mature, and they'll work out in the weight room, and they may even play some club teams and try to do some things on the individual basis, get involved with club play, so that they sharpen their skills and stay with soccer and continue to try and graduate on time. But we'll have them for an extra year or 2, and I'm real excited about that.
Could I ask one question before you go on with the other members? What was their reaction when you got them together and you said, I want to redshirt you for a year?
Well, I took a different approach. I asked them. One thing I've learned about coaching, the old days, I've been around here so long, the old days was you do it my way, this way, that's the only way. Now I think my whole approach to coaching is different. We try to put some tidbits out there, let them think about things, and then go back and ask them, what do you think? How do you think it fits into what we're trying to do here? And if they buy into things and they feel like they're making the decision, then it's a positive thing. Well, what we did is we just laid everything out. We told them that this is the transition year. We can't have any postseason play. We would love to have some of you redshirt. Think about it for a week, come back, and I think they all talked about it. And once one decided to redshirt, then they all decided to redshirt. So I think that goes hand in hand with some pride. They were all members of, except for Buck and Carrier and Laliberty, they were all members of that Division II regional they got a taste of what it's like to go to postseason. And they have some pride. They know that they're a good group, and they think that maybe we can do that in 2 years. So
now let's go on with some of the others.
Well, unfortunately for Braden Butler and Chris Kramer, they will be 5th-year seniors next year, and they have no redshirt opportunities. So they will play next year in their 5th year. And we're looking for leadership from them and Will Cook, who will be a 5th-year senior as well. So we'll have 3 older guys, and we'll let them kind of take the helm, if you will, and hopefully they'll provide good leadership to a bunch of young kids. The rest of the team will be all freshmen, and we'll have a lot of walk-ons. It's going to give a great opportunity for a bunch of young people to come in and play a Division I schedule right away. So that's what we're really recruiting right now, telling freshmen, look, you may take your lumps, but it's a great way to come in and play right from the get-go.
I know we talked off air what could have been, what might have been had circumstances been different, but you did want to give kudos to a couple of teams that you faced this year.
One in particular. We probably played our best game at Lewis University. Lewis is a well-respected team. There are 2 teams in the conference that are arch rivals of IPFW, and we hate to leave the Great Lakes Valley because of it, Lewis and Parkside. And Lewis and Parkside played for the conference championship. Parkside won the conference championship, and then both got invitations to the NCAA tournament. So because of that loss to Parkside in the GLVC championship, Lewis had to go up to Parkside and play him in the NCAA. Lewis won that game, so they were regional champions. And then they went on and played number 2 ranked team in the nation, Wheeling Jesuit, at Wheeling, and beat them 1-0. So Lewis is in the Final Four. Now, what that does to IPFW, even though we would like to be there, it makes us feel really, really good to know that a team that we beat is going to the Final Four. We know in our hearts that we had that caliber of team, and we wish Lewis well. We hope they win the national title. It'd make us feel really, really proud.
And the other team you wanted to give kudos to?
Is Indiana University. They lost a lot of kids from their national championship team, and they came back with a lot of freshmen. They lost a few games, and because of it, they weren't a number 1 seed, and they had to go out and play the number 2 ranked team in the nation, San Jose, which I believe San Jose's record was 20-0-2. Number 2 ranked. Going out to California, Indiana didn't have much of a chance, and they ended up winning 4-0 in the first round. So I congratulate Jerry Yeagley, and by the way, they're coming back to the showcase next year. We want to talk a little bit about that.
You're leading into that.
Yeah. Year 2001 showcase, we have 6 teams set. In bracket number 1, we have Indiana University, South Carolina, and University of Alabama, Birmingham. All 3 NCAA teams this year. In bracket 2, we have Notre Dame, IPFW, and University of Michigan. So instead of playing IU, we're going to probably play Notre Dame and Michigan, and now we're looking for a 4th team in each bracket. So it's shaping up to be a great showcase again.
And the other thing I think we briefly touched on the last time you were on, talk a little bit about the exhibition match with the women that's going to be part of that weekend.
Yeah, we're not going to call it a showcase, but we're going to scrimmage IUPUI, and we've invited Indiana University's women's team up here as well. That hasn't been solidified yet, but there's a real good possibility. We want to move into a showcase type of thing with the women, taking it a step at a time, a year at a time.
In the final minute that we have on this segment, let's put the crystal ball on. What are your hopes, goals, and aspirations for this coming season for both men and women? Final question of the day.
Naturally, we want to have a winning season. That's our first goal. With the women, it's like a 360. I think that the women now are going to be the team that will have a great opportunity to really, really have a great season, depending on our recruiting group, but to be able to return 10 people and 8 starters, I look for really good things from the women. On the men's side, they will be so young that we'll probably do the same thing we did with the women. Go back to the teaching of the fundamentals, present an attitude towards winning, and try and do the best we can to try and improve each game.
Well, congratulations on a marvelous undertaking, not only coaching one team, but coaching 2 teams this past season. And though it was rocky a little bit on the men's side, great strides in the women's program, and we wish you success in the years to come.
Thank you very much.
Terry Stefankowitz has been our first guest here today, the head men's and women's soccer coach here at IPFW. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, the Dean of Coaches here at IPFW, none other than Arnie Ball, for our annual visit with men's volleyball. That's when Mastodon Spotlight comes back in just a moment.
They came from every corner of the country. From small towns cities. But they all shared one thing in common. They belonged to a family called Marines. A tough and determined few, dedicated to protecting everything we hold sacred. And still they come. Celebrate the 225-year history of those proud few who have earned the title Marine.
My Youth for Understanding experience was the best thing I've ever done in my entire life.
If you want to learn a language, this is how you do it. You have to live here and you have to breathe in the country.
You meet a whole new family that are willing to accept you and take you in. I feel just like I'm a part of your family. Being involved with the family, living right at home, that has been my best learning experience so far.
You only live once, so you do it, try it, live it. It was great. It was incredible.
Go global.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, we visited with Terry Stefankowitz a few moments ago and talked about the soccer program. Now we're going to shift gears and we bring in, as I mentioned a moment ago, the Dean of Coaches here at IPFW, the one, the only, Ernie Ball, head men's volleyball coach. Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight, sir.
Does that mean I'm the oldest on the staff? Is that what you're trying to say? Or you like my haircut? Is that the deal?
I like the haircut.
Yeah.
Always like the haircut.
I mean, Dean? I don't know about that much.
Well, you're going into year number 21,
Is that
longer
right?
than anybody else here on staff.
Maybe it's time to retire.
No.
Yeah? Maybe it's time to retire if I've been here that long.
No. This program wouldn't know what to do without you. How has your summer been in early fall?
Well, summer went by in a hurry, Mike, with all the the camps and all the stuff we do, and certainly a little bit of recruiting and going to Sydney. Why, it didn't take very long for my summer to blow by in a hurry.
Before we talk about IPFW's volleyball team, you mentioned Sydney, and you had the chance to go to Sydney and see Lloyd play and work with the U.S. team. What was that experience like?
Actually, Mike, it goes back a little further than that. We, as you know, we had them here in July, into June, 1st of July, and so I spent about 10 days traveling with the team and getting all that organized, and then of course Brazil stayed a few days longer. So that whole experience was a very busy experience, but a great experience for not only me personally, having my son, the team here, and getting a chance to work with the team, but certainly the exposure in our community. And then come August, I did all our camps in July. Then come August, I went to Brazil with the team, and I was down there 2 weeks for the America's Cup. First time I've ever been to Brazil, and really the longest period of time I've ever been with the national team with an international tournament. So that was a great experience. And of course, then when Sydney rolled around, having a chance to go there, and my wife got to go along, was summer just went by in a hurry.
What's the atmosphere like there at Sydney? Obviously you watched the volleyball matches, but obviously also you had a chance, I think, to visit a little bit and see other events. But what was the atmosphere in general like when you've got people from all over the world?
Mike, it's of course Sydney and Atlanta in '96, and then I've done 4 World University Games all over the world. And the University Games are the second largest amateur competition in the world next to the Olympics, and a lot of people don't know that. But and in every one of those, including the Olympics, obviously, the atmosphere is just electrifying. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to opening ceremonies in Sydney. We went to the one in Atlanta, and I've been to all the opening ceremonies of the World University Games I've been a part of. And that just really sets the tone, when all the countries come in and all the people cheer and the athletes are waving and the camaraderie of all the nations as you march into opening ceremonies is just electrifying. And of course, the ceremonial part of opening ceremonies and that whole atmosphere, both in Atlanta and in Sydney carried through the whole time we were there, all 17 days in both experiences. They had 43,000 volunteers for the Olympic Games in Sydney. And I was telling a group the other day that I spoke to, I don't remember ever seeing a volunteer without a smile on their face. I mean, that's just kind of the atmosphere of the whole event. And of course, the athletes obviously are competing against one another, but yet so many of these athletes have competed against one another for so long that they're really good friends. You know, it doesn't make a difference if you're from the Soviet Union or you're from the United States, or you're from Brazil. You know, they all know one another, and so they compete hard in the arena. But when the game is over, they're really friends, and it's really a wonderful atmosphere. And the people of Australia were the same way. They were just wonderful, very, very hospitable.
It sounded and looked like, from what we saw back here, is that the Sydney people learned an awful lot from how to run the organizational part of the Olympics from what happened in Atlanta. Obviously, there were a few problems here and there in Atlanta, and it seemed like everything went off without a hitch.
The only problem that I know about is the same problem they had in Atlanta. You know, it's such a massive undertaking to move people and move teams and fans and so on and so forth, that they bring bus drivers in from other parts of the country. Well, the bus drivers from other parts of Sydney didn't know how to get around Sydney. So the first couple of days they're lost, and they're all, same thing happened in Atlanta, the very same thing. But once they got that taken care of, I don't know of any transportational problems as far as players or teams, fans. They have a real good mass transit system in Sydney. I mean, we rode the train everywhere we went. Where we stayed was only a half a block from the train station. Walk down, and you have a badge that allows you on the train, and you can go any of the venues you could just go. And at Olympic Park, where they hold the track and field, and they held some basketball and some of the volleyball, baseball was there. They actually 3 times a day during the track and field events moved about 500,000 people at a time. Now that includes all the people going to the track and field and the baseball and so on and so forth. And if you can imagine, now 3 times a day they did that, because they have a morning session, afternoon, and an evening session. If you can imagine just the organizational skills that it takes to do that, and I heard very, very few complaints in regards to all that. I didn't bother going out there. I had my own things to do at that point, but it was just very, very well organized, very well run. My wife and I would have stayed. If I could have found a decent paying job, I might have just stayed, because it was just great. We really loved it.
Last question I'm going to ask in regards to the Olympics. What happened to the men's team?
Well, of course, if I knew an answer to that, I'd have paid a lot of dollars and not let that happen. And there are a number of scenarios. Having been part of the staff, we spent a lot of time each day after we lost. You know, you have a day off, so you have a day to prepare. We spent a lot of time in meetings talking about the team, talking about personnel, talking about things that we need to do differently. But when it really comes down to the bottom line, I believe the teams were better than us. You know, sometimes you got to say teams are better than us. Now, we had played real well early in the summer, and had beaten Brazil twice down in Brazil, but Brazil didn't have all of their players there. Other countries in the world have such a depth within their pool of players as compared to us. So during the World League, where we ended up playing the finals but didn't have a very good final tournament, we had to play the same players over and over and over again. Russia, Yugoslavia, Brazil, Italy, they're all playing kind of rotating their players, so guys are getting to rest. They don't have to travel overseas all the time. I think Loy, in the last 4 months before the Olympics, was only home like 3 days, home in his own bed. Not that that's an excuse, but you know, that stuff begins to wear on you. So a combination of other teams just being better than us. We had one guy out with mono, so he never got to play at all. We had another guy with a pulled stomach muscle and didn't play, only about 50%. Loy hurt his knee in Brazil. Once again, no excuses, but just a combination of a lot of things. And then when you look at the finals, the final 4 teams were all out of our pool. There were no teams out of the other pool that made it to the final 4. So we by far had the most difficult pool. And so those combination of things just came down to the point that we didn't qualify for the medal round.
Was this the final hurrah for Loy in terms of Olympic competition?
As of right now, they've asked him to come back. They told him he can have 2 years off. He's playing in Italy right now. They told him he can have 2 years off to play over in Italy and then try and regroup a little bit physically. He's not had any time off for 7 years, literally. And so They've asked him to do that. He's told them that he'll just wait and see. I think it depends on a number of things. It depends on his physical well-being, and his knee is getting much better, so we're real thankful for that. I think it depends on that. I think it depends on his ability to just train, not train in the gym, but train in the weight room, do some stuff. And I think it also depends on who's on the coaching staff.
I heard some rumors or potential rumors. Realistically, what are the chances that you might be named the head coach of the U.S. team? I know it's a ways to go, but
we'll know after the first year if the USA people have asked Coach Beal to come back. I think that's a great choice. He's probably the best coach in the world. I know that he's considering coming back, but he has 2 small children, so that's a consideration because he's actually gone about half the year away from home. I have talked to USA people. I have told them that I'm very interested in being part of the national team program at some point, and then it becomes a matter of timing.
Well, we'll see what happens. Let's go away from the Olympics now and that experience, and let's talk about IPFW volleyball. And we're going to talk about this coming season in the next segment, but let's briefly, in the final couple of minutes of this segment, take a brief look back at last year's team. 21-8, 12-2 in MIVA play. Everything, it wasn't the year you would have liked because you ran into an Ohio State team that knocked you off not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I know it had to have been a big disappointment not to have qualified for the Final Four with the Final Four here in Fort Wayne.
Well, I suppose that's an understatement, in regards to being disappointed. That's the third Final Four we've hosted here in Fort Wayne, and of course we've played in one of them. And I'm not sure that I would really entertain hosting the Final Four again. I think it puts way too much undue pressure on our own program. I haven't hosted the MIVA tournament since '94, I guess, for the same reason. It just puts too much expectation on your own team and takes away from your ability to focus with your own team because you're so busy doing other administrative kind of things because you want the tournament to be successful. I'm not saying that's why we didn't qualify. I think Ohio State was obviously a very good team. They showed that by beating Pepperdine in the semifinals. It was a team that we just weren't able to handle because of their strength in the middle, and certainly Aha at the setter position was very good, and of course Chris is good at our position too. But they were just maybe a little better team than us, and once again, I don't know how to put a finger on that. Our team was certainly very talented. It's as talented a team as we've had as far as the physical ability is concerned. But it puts an awful lot of undue pressure on your team and your staff when the expectation are for the tournament to be successful, the national tournament to be successful, your team needs to be in it. And I think that's unfair to the kids. So obviously it was disappointing, not only from the standpoint that we weren't in it, but I was tremendously disappointed in our community, to be real honest with you, because the support was very poor. Attendance was very poor. We went from setting a record in 1994 to being the worst in attendance in 2000. And if you're going to be a community that's going to support your local campus or campuses or whatever, it doesn't make any difference whether your team's in or not, especially on a national scale. It was on ESPN and so on and so forth. And so I know I'm disappointed in our own team, but I'm certainly disappointed in the outcome of the support that we got within the community as well.
Final question, this segment. Did you get any feedback from the NCAA in terms of their disappointment in the tournament?
Only from the NCAA committee, and that committee is an adjunct committee of different ADs and coaches, throughout the country. And obviously, they have the same kind of excitement that I have about volleyball, in particular, men's volleyball, but I've been on both sides, so I have an excitement about both. But it's our national championship, and men's volleyball is a sport that's struggling to maintain its status within the NCAA. And when we don't have the kind of support that we didn't have here, it just kind of accentuates the fact that maybe we shouldn't have men's volleyball in the NCAA if indeed people aren't going to support it. And that is a legitimate concern not only of the committee, but certainly all of us who are directly involved in men's volleyball across the country.
We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to continue talking about IPFW volleyball, the 2000-2001 season version. That's when Mastodon Spotlight comes back in just a moment.
Excuse me. Excuse me, are you Santa Claus? I heard you might be him. If you are him, here's my list.
Help the Marines make Christmas possible for less fortunate children. Donate a new toy to Toys for Tots.
Here's Santa Claus.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Our guest this segment is the Dean of Coaches here at IPFW, head men's volleyball coach Arnie Ball. And Arnie, I hope you don't you're not mad at me for calling you the Dean of Coaches, but you've been here longer than any other coach on campus.
You know, Mike, I have to question your ability to be the host of this show in regards to, first of all, calling me the Dean, but at least Josh has been awake during my segment, during when you and Stefankowitz were sleeping. So, you know, be careful who you call Dean around here. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Holy cow.
Yes, sir.
John, we need to get some better help if Josh is going to sleep on the show here. All right?
That's Coach talking to our erstwhile producer, John Yaus, in the background.
Yeah, well, John's always been in the background. I've known John since he's been real little. He's always been in the background thinking he ought to be in the forefront. Isn't that right, John? What are we talking about, Mike?
You don't want to know
what
what's coming.
about, Mike?
Let's move on to other things. Let's move on to this coming season in volleyball. The first question I'm going to ask, with fear of possibly getting something thrown at me, your reaction to the university going to D1 status, and how has it affected your volleyball team?
I think from the administration standpoint, they're excited about Division I. From men's volleyball program, I'm not excited about it. It's a step backwards for us. But that's a decision somebody else has to make and not me. It makes it much more difficult for us to recruit. It has a direct reflect on our team coming up this year because of things that we were told that didn't happen. So we have some kids who are ineligible that I had anticipated would be ineligible. It makes us on the same playing field as Ohio State and Ball State and Loyola Chicago and UCLA and so on and so forth, who have a much different ability to attract student athletes to their campus than what we do here at IPFW. Certainly don't mean that in a negative towards IPFW. The university has been wonderful to me, both administratively, supportive in both my men's programs and women's programs when I was athletic director, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, even if we get dormitories in a couple of years, I'm never going to have 90,000 people in the football stadium at Ohio State, or the kind of atmosphere that Ball State has campus-wise, and that's a major attraction to student athletes. With the Division I rules as they are, being equal across the board, the three kids that I have who've contacted us this fall, who would have been eligible under Division II rules that I can't take in January, directly affect my ability to put a competitive team at the same level that we've had in the past. Certainly it also makes a strain on me personally because recruiting rules changed dramatically, and so we've got to be out a lot more. Now we're supposedly going to get an assistant coach, and that will help a great deal, of which I've never had, and I'm very thankful for that. But it affects us, what I think is dramatic. Now, I think the administration would tell you something different, but that's the side of this chair that I sit on.
Having said that, let's talk about the makeup of eligible players on this year's team.
Well, we got to revert back a little bit to last year. You know, when you lose Hector and Chris Gislin, 2 All-Americans, and you lose Mike Cummings, who started in middle for us for 3 years, and you lose Scotty Lane, who was the most valuable player in the NCAA tournament in 1999. I mean, those are the 4 kids we lost. We don't have the kind of resources that UCLA has or USC has to, and Penn State and Ohio State, to redshirt players or to have a pool of players that you can replace those kind of people. So when you lose 4 quality players like that and have no seniors on this team, because we didn't have any juniors on the team last year, and that wasn't intentional. Sometimes those things just happen in the recruiting cycles. It takes a while to replenish those kinds of players, not only athletically, but certainly with that kind of experience. I mean, Chris Gislin started 4 years. Soto started 4 years. Lane might as well have started 4 years because he played 2 years at junior college and then came here and played 2 years, and Mike played 3 years. And so just restocking makes it much more difficult for us as compared, once again, to Al Skates at UCLA, who has 33 players in his program, and right now we have 10 eligible players in our program. So from that standpoint, we're going to be real thin this year. Of course, the biggest problem for our team is replacing all those players, but in particular, replacing Chris Gislin at the setter spot, because you just won't find big kids like that who can play. And the young man whom we had recruited out of a junior college in California, who was to be eligible under Division II rules, has now been declared ineligible and is not able to play at all for us. So we're really scrambling at that position right now. We have a couple of kids who this fall who've been training it there, but their level of play is not quite what Travis's is. So we're just not sure what's going to happen at that position. So we're going to be real thin in numbers, and we're going to be pretty suspect at the setter position.
The MIVA, in general, is always, for the last few years, getting tougher and tougher. And you've got not only Ohio State, you've got Lewis. Those 2 come to mind real quick. How do you see the MIVA race this year?
Well, all this is going to intertwine within this Division I stuff that we've been talking about. Ohio State lost some really key people also. So, I mean, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. They have 2 really good players back, but actually we have 2 really good players back too, in Angel and Jeff Patek. So I think we match up pretty well there. The thing that Ohio State has that, once again, we didn't have and don't have is they're able to attract some other kids whose parents are willing to pay for those kids to go to Ohio State and be part of that program. So they had some redshirted kids also that are going to be able to come in. They also recruited a really fine player that we tried to recruit out of Canada, and I just have to tell you that his father finally said to me, well, we want our kid to go to Ohio State because it's Ohio State. I can't argue with that, and so the young man is really, they're not going to be as good as last year. Ball State is going to be okay, but not great, but okay. I think those 2 teams will be real comparable. The 2 teams that I think are going to be really good are Lewis and Quincy. Now, they're both Division II schools and have those same recruiting advantages that we had, but they're both private schools, so they have some additional ways to fund, athletes that we don't have here, or Ohio State hasn't have, or Ball State doesn't have. At last count, Lewis has 2 Brazilians, a couple kids from Poland. I mean, they have literally kids from all over the world that they're able to recruit on 4.5 scholarships, partly because it's Lewis and it's a private school, and they're able to do some things that we're not able to, and partly because the rules are different. And so they're able to get those kids that we were able to get before, and of course Quincy's a Division II school also. So I think those 2 programs are going to be really good, and they have Quincy has a lot of kids back, and they were pretty good last year, and Lewis just has recruited the world. Mercyhurst is a Division II school also, and they have those same advantages, and we've just taken on Findlay College into our conference, and they're a Division II school in the GLIAC, and they're fully funded right out of the chute, and I expect them in a couple of years to be very good. So I think the conference is going to be very well balanced, and not to be surprised to see Quincy and Lewis and maybe Mercyhurst, but Quincy and Lewis in particular, to be the real strong teams in the years to come.
Is there a way, given everything that's happened, that IPFW can get back in the ballgame? What can IPFW do?
We have to be very selective in our recruiting process. We have 4.5 scholarships, which is the same everybody else has. But now we have to recruit the same players that Ball State and Ohio State and Penn State and UCLA recruits. See, because in the past we went after those same kids. We still competed with those same kids. But if the kid went to Pepperdine, like the kid just signed from Pepperdine out of Chicago, a kid just signed at Long Beach out of St. Louis, a kid just signed at Long Beach out of Minnesota. Now these kids are all out of my backyard, but they're going to those schools because of the name, and so we have to be real selective in the kids that we recruit, and we'll be real aggressive into Puerto Rico looking for kids that will be eligible to Ohio State and have to try and compete with. We'll be real aggressive in Canada. It'll be real difficult for us to be aggressive in the U.S. Not that we won't be, but those kids end up going to the named schools. When Pepperdine walks in, they go to Pepperdine, and so we can't rely now on the kids who couldn't go to Pepperdine but could go to IPFW. So we're just going to have to be much more selective in our recruiting in the kids that we go after, and work really hard to convince them that because volleyball is very popular here in our community, that indeed they ought to come here. And certainly the quality of education is very good here. No one can ever argue that. And the Chancellor and I talk about it a lot. And the student ratio of one on in some cases 3 or 4 at the upper level classes in the business and engineering and so on and so forth. The quality of education, Big Ten education, but it's really difficult to overcome the image when Coach Hansen brings kids in the fall to the Ohio State-Michigan game, and we're on an equal footing in regards to education and so on and so forth, and to get the kid to come here. So we just have to be more selective in our recruiting. Have to work at it a little harder.
Knowing your tenacity, I have confidence you'll get the job done. Truthfully, I do, and I wish you well in it.
Well, we'll see how much the old guy, since I'm the dean, how much energy I can put into all this.
We're out of time, but I do appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward to the season. We look forward to seeing you on your show starting in January, first part of January after the new year comes. And we're looking forward, I believe, our first broadcast is the weekend of January 12th and 13th. I could be mistaken on that,
I think it's
but
13th.
I do know that we have those 2 matches. Be a busy weekend here at College 56 with 2 volleyball matches and 2 basketball games on the 13th, but we are looking forward to it, and we wish you well in the coming season.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Arnie Ball has been our guest, head men's volleyball coach here at IPFW. That will do it for this edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Again, we want to thank Coach Ball and thank Coach Terry, he'll kill me, Stefankowitz, the men's and women's soccer coach, for appearing on the show today. And as always, we thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. We invite you to come back next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until then, this is Mike Maas saying, have a great week and a great Thanksgiving, and go Dons.